name is Ocean Eiler, otherwise known as the Librarian, is my DJ name. I graduated Ohio University in 2002. I was actually an alumni of WLHD, but I spent enough time with ACRN because of all the kids that were also involved in the rave community. So I did more background work with ACRN, just helping loading decks and moving speakers for parties when there were, or just hanging out with people that were at the time playing. When I wasn't playing down at WLHD. It was campus radio. If I remember correctly, it was E-Screen radio. It was right across from the cafeteria there. I actually walked by and took a picture of the place. It's now a dorm room. I was really sad to see that it wasn't just like, covered in dust and whatnot. And I was like, that was my dream, is like look in the window and be like, oh my god, it's all in there. I was looking in someone's dorm room. Casually from the other side of the street, I wasn't peeping. But yeah, it was just campus radio, and at that point in time, every green had their own radio station, and then there was ACRN, the big one. And there was prestige with ACRN. And it's funny because the cats that started Universal Groove, which was the DJ collective, this got started in '93, a lot of them came out of ACRN. And so there was this like direct attachment to it. So when I was asking like, hey, do you guys still have those turntables floating around, is because the original decks that we were using for those parties were ACRN's decks. So in '96 is when I first started going to the shows, before I got into Ohio University. I was still a senior in high school, at Athens High School. And I just kept showing up to the parties and hearing the sound and really getting inspired by, at that point in time, early '90s rave music. So you've got your house and techno that was coming out of Detroit and Chicago that was infiltrating the Midwest. You would get some sounds of trance that was coming through the UK, and like the Tiestos of that era, but it was still being overrun by what was coming out of New York, what was coming out of Chicago, what was coming out of Detroit. Drum and bass was not much of a thing at that point. Finding a drum and bass DJ was kind of like finding a pearl in an oyster, if you will. Like, it was few and far between. And when you did find them at a rave in the Midwest, it was always in the back room, kind of in a cafeteria, or like a little like kitchen, like back room setup. I slowly got involved by going to Universal group parties and just being a face. Later, as those kids graduated out, it morphed into a group called Headroom, and I have all these flyers as well. And Headroom, I started to get more involved with moving speakers here and there, being a speaker box boy, for lack of a better word. And then eventually got into making flyers for them. And at that point in time, it had gone from more of a house, it was more well-rounded, I'd say, like in the beginning. And then there was the techno era. There was Jeff Samuel and Brad, I'm gonna forget your name, but luckily enough I have your CD. Bradley Scott. And they were the two techno DJs, and they pulled a crowd, and it was nuts. I mean, when I think about the viability of techno as something that would draw your average OU student out to dance, somehow they made it work. They made it sexy. And at that point in time, I was doing flyers for them. I was a VisCom major, so I was shooting photography. This is still film. And at that point, I hadn't gotten into video. I had a video camera, but it was really hard to convert to digital, and then I didn't have the computer to take the bandwidth to make that work. So it was this weird trapped system. So I have some early mini DV tapes that I still need to convert over, but I also need to find them. We had hip-hop, graffiti, you named it. I mean, I got popped for graffiti early on, which is actually where the music focus took over, because had I not, I was spending enough money on spray cans that I wasn't buying a bunch of records. And then I switched over and started doing that, but this is, I'm gonna guess this is Douglas Black at the time. Might have been Dig Dug, actually. It was early enough. Unless he was playing drum and bass, and then he was Morpheus. And I have him to thank for a lot of my drum and bass collection, because as he was getting out of drum and bass and getting heavier into deep house, he was going to flip everything on this new thing called eBay. And he, said, hey, go through and take what you want. Unfortunately, I don't think he realized how much I was going to take, and I give him mad credit for letting me walk out of the house with like 3 crates worth of records. Because my senior thesis project was creating a headroom website, and I wanted to tell the history of it. And so I've got an early email floating around here from Johnny V, giving me the whole rundown on that it got started in '93, that who it was started with and by. It was Jason Lyman. Yes, Jason Lyman and him started the push. And then we had people like Temple that came through, and I don't know when Temple joined the party, but I know he was there because he was one of my favorites. Like, if I saw Jason or Temple on a bill, I was at that party. And Annihilation Party, as I'm sitting here holding this flyer, this was that online record store that I was talking about. And we got Eldridge to make us a graphic for it. I was on the street, I was my own street team, but I was also doing the flyers for it, and then DJing the gigs. Oftentimes I ran as opener, only because I was the free help. It's like we were always trying to pull someone else in, whether or not it was another alumni who played ages ago, or whether or not we were trying to get He So High or Tauntaun to come down from Columbus or Akron, respectively. We pulled in some decent names, but at that point in time we were really focused on bringing back the alums that had been already through, because we had so many large powerhouses that come through. You had Jason Lyman, you had Ted Knight, Johnny V, Temple. Really sad, I can't remember his name. John Temple, James Temple, I think his name is. You have the 2 techno DJs that I talked about earlier, Jeff Samuel and Bradley. You also had the 2 trance heads. That was Nate and Christian, and it was like Dweezil, I think was his trance handle. And they were early in the internet trance radio gigs. Like, they were getting international attention for their trance sets, which is at the time, like, how ahead of the curve those cats were still blows my mind. And they were playing on CDJs, which at that point in time, CDJs was new tech and kind of mind-blowing and really kind of skittish because of the whole time buffer sensitivity to it. Not anything like the CDJs of now. And so hats off to them for all that. And then took a year off. I moved to Switzerland. I worked for a nonprofit over in Geneva, Switzerland. When I came back, and I'm definitely missing a handful of DJs in here, and it's not for not giving them respect. I'm just completely spacing on who they were. So B-Funk was a year under me in high school, and I'm pretty sure I'm willing to say I was at his first party, which was at the rec center, Athens Rec Center, back when I was in this weird half airplane hangar. And this is around the era of the movie Hackers, for lack of a better word, to set a scene. And he was playing with a straight-edge punk rock kid named Ted Rife, who had moved into town shortly before. And both of them threw a really wild party. It was great. And then throughout college and throughout this time period, I kind of lost touch with him. And I'm sure that he was doing a lot of stuff, because when I left, actually when I came back from Switzerland, at that point in time he had blown up. And Dave, I think it was Dave Fraves, was what originally started under, had taken off, and I was like, who's this Dave Frave cat? And then I find out that he's either affiliated with it or is running it fully. I don't know the full story on it. And every time I've caught him in a podcast or his mix set or an interview with him, I'm always super proud of what he's done and the music that he's bringing to Athens on a daily. His Trust Me sets are still some of like my all-time favorite sets that I've caught recently. For sure. And Bardicus used to be teamed up with a guy by the name of Ruckus Roboticus. I knew Ruckus Roboticus pretty well. Bardicus I didn't know as well at the time. But both of them together were a force to be reckoned with. And we kept trying to bring them into the Headroom camp and figuring out how to make that work. But the open freestyle format that they were playing, hip-hop and open freestyle, versus a hardcore rave that we were throwing at that point, it didn't blow them well. It was fun to bring them in, and I enjoyed trying to support them. It's funny, I found a bunch of flyers with them on it, and Spartacus in particular. And they were malleable enough that they knew that they were walking to that sort of party, they could rock that party. They could, flip the switch and be like, oh, okay, this is the party I'm playing? Alright, cool, I got Creator Records for that. No big deal. And it's really fun that he's now on big time radio, because we didn't have good music selectors like that back in the day. It was all really bad hair metal or country. And it was like, you had grunge, but grunge was the new stuff. It wasn't played as much as the hair metal. And so like there was this weird transition period. And I guess in college at that point in time we'd gone just full core grunge, and that was all it was for 24/7. Or whatever the pop flavor of grunge was at that point in time. It's fun. It's great for rock jocks. Not to diss on him, but I thoroughly enjoyed his. I keep catching his live feeds, on Instagram, and that's how I've stayed in contact with him. And I love the jumper thing. I don't know what it's all about, but I just love the fact that he rocks a jumper. It's super fun, and there's so many colors.
Mm-hmm.
This was DJ 40 Ounce. Like he was the other drum and bass DJ in the place, and he was so talented. But he also played hip hop, and was able to mix the two together pretty smoothly, for lack of a better word. And it's funny when most people think about jungle and drum and bass, they're thinking of it at 175 beats per minute. But if you do the half of that, that's 86.
Standard hip hop.
Exactly.
BPM, 87.5.
Especially at that point in time, I was wildly inspired by the flyers of the day, and it was all very techno and technology will save us all, better living through chemistry, and so it was like very science focused, very kind of trying to give the nod to analog, but also like that we were pushing forward, we were making future music here, like this is the bag that it was. I think that's where a lot of the art that I did came from. This one, it's funny, like I look at it and I'm like, this is such a Viscom design, it hurts. Viscom has such a look and feel, it's insane that it hasn't changed, but it's the same since the mid-90s, and you can just look at someone's work and go, oh, you're a Viscom kid. Alright, I get it.
Professors from the 90s.
Yeah, well, it's a motif. And it's this weird thing that just builds upon itself and snowballs, where like this has some of those nods, but is a little bit more abstract, a little bit more complex. There's more time put into it. I was a dual major, interactive multimedia and graphic design, and so I had both sides. And as I got deeper into the graphic design side, it was more like, okay, you've got that design, that's cool. Now let's refine it. Let's keep rounding those edges until you've got like the perfect piece. And a lot of it just felt very inspired by technology. I felt like I was pulling from like old movies of Tron, but I was also inspired by like the crazy stuff that this new Cartoon Network had just come out with, and Adult Swim in particular. this was back in the era when I would be saving flash files, and it would take 15, 20 minutes to save a flash file. Or there was a program called Director. You had to write this horrible program called Lingo to get it to do anything. But I would save those files, and I had a switcher on my monitor that I could go from my computer to a standard coax cable input, and so that I could run all my video game systems into the same monitor. And so I would pause my Dreamcast or the original PlayStation, and I had a Nintendo 64, but that mainly stayed outside in the living room. And I could run an entire game of Soul Calibur before my files would stop saving. But that was the era I was playing in. We started Art vs. Sound, where we teamed up with a bunch of local artists, and over on the west side, slightly up the street from Stumac, the big factory over there. It's really killing me that I can't think of the street. We found an old plumbing supply building, and so the front face was the storefront, and we converted that to galleries, and then the back space was all warehouse, and it was rough and rugged warehouse. We had like hardwood floors and cinder block walls, and that was it. And so we started throwing our own art house rave parties, and we would invite artists to come through, and some people would be doing art in the moment, some people would just be showing. It was all word of mouth. I mean, when I come back and I talk to people about how we did and what we did, it was like running into an old headroom dancer who now is a local running store. You know, it was a weird side comment as I was buying some new kicks. I made some comment about playing for Headroom, and he was like, "Oh, I used to go to those parties." And she's like, "That was how we found the space. It's like someone had bought the space. They were eventually going to flip it and turn it into apartments, but they had the money to buy the space. They didn't have the money to make the renovation, so it was just sitting there. So it's better for us to go in and pay him a little bit of rent, through the parties. Otherwise, we were renting out spaces, we were talking to bars. I mean, when I think about all the bars that we used to play at that aren't here anymore, and it's actually more comical because of some of those locations have switched so many times, I couldn't tell you necessarily where it is, because saying something like next to the Magic Video means nothing to you, but I could point to, okay, you know where the Pizza Hut is, or no, not Pizza Hut, Domino's. Alright, so you got Domino's there, along that strip of shops and buildings right after Precision Imprint, there was a place called Another Fool's Cafe. Another Fool's Cafe was in limbo trying to get their alcohol license, and so it was a BYOB bar. And so what also that meant was all age shows were really easy to throw there, and so we would throw all sorts of. How I got involved before this was punk and ska. Was my background previous, and so I knew that location for that. And then I remember the first day I walked in there on a Universal Groove night, and it completely changed my brain of thinking about that space. I was like, wow, like, multiple events happening here with amazing, talented people that are playing music that I didn't know was being played here. Original flyer from back in the day.
That's so cool.
For that.
Wow.
Yeah. Because we have all that.
That's really sick.
Yep. And that was before I knew anything really. I was playing music. I had vinyl. I was buying as much as I could.
I'm the librarian. I'm the librarian.